CEO, everything has to go through the CEO, and the CEO is the ultimate decision maker. And where you start running into issues for scaling and for growing is when the CEO is involved in the paper clips that get bought for the office. So the CEO is typically the biggest bottleneck, or the manager.
Welcome back to another episode of Intrepidus Podcast with your hosts, Dan and Anthony. Today's guest is Armando Soto with Alpha Advisors. Welcome to the show, Armando.
Thank you for having me, guys. And Dan, it's really good to see you. It's been 16 years.
16 years. Yeah. Wow, this is a bit of a fucking reunion, huh?
It is.
It's cute.
Excited to be here. Excited to be back in Jersey.
Super cute. Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Alpha Advisors, Armando?
Sure. So Alpha Advisors is an advisory company where I help private and public companies really develop a corporate strategy. What that means is, how do we get this company from, say, $5 million in revenues to $20 million, $30 million, $100 million in revenues over the next 5 to 10 years? And it's really, I've had the experience doing it. I have my first client is still with me today. They're now a over $500 million revenue company that started from zero. They were actually losing $3 million per year. So with them as a client, I was able to use that success, that experience, and that referral to acquire many more clients over time. I've done over $1 billion in M&A transactions and financings for companies, and I worked on Wall Street for the last 15 years.
Fantastic. Wow. $1 billion in changing hands between businesses. That's fantastic. So how exactly did you get involved in this type of business? It's not very often you come across someone like yourself.
So it really came down to when I was a kid. My father and I were watching the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Good movie.
And you see the trading pits, the World Trade Center. I was living in Guatemala at the time, a third world country. We didn't have the kind of infrastructure that the United States has. And I'm looking at these big buildings and all this energy that's going on. And I'm asking my father, I said, what is that all about? What is happening? And he literally tells me, son, that's where the biggest deals in the world happen in split seconds at times. And millions upon billions of dollars every day exchange hands in that very place. So that really got me intrigued throughout my whole entire life about finance. And when I came to this country when I was 15 years old, I told my mother, I said, I want to be a stockbroker when I grow up. And she literally laughed me off and she said, honey, no, you're going to get a job. You're going to find something secure, and that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, so how'd you take that? Clearly not very well.
At the time, your parents are trying to protect you. They want what's best for you, but they're also stuck with the limiting beliefs that they had growing up, and they were also told to play it safe. So naturally, they pass on that cycle to the next generation and asking their kids to play it safe, get a job, go to school. What I wound up doing was signing up for plumbing school because naturally I had just come from another country. I didn't really speak English, and it was cumbersome for me to get anything done in business if you don't really speak the language. And English is the language of business. So I took on the plumbing trade. I figure a plumber never goes hungry. And I went through 4 years of plumbing school. During that time is when I met Dan. He had his construction company. And he was actually the one that opened the entrepreneurial idea and planted the entrepreneurial seed into me when he asked me, hey, would you be open to doing some side work at night or on the weekends and earn some extra cash doing some work for me? So thank you, Dan, because you were the one that literally helped plant that seed that grew into what my career turned out to be today. In 2008, as everybody knows, or maybe a lot of kids weren't even born yet today, the market's tanked. In the construction industry literally came to a halt, and I was doing all new construction and renovation projects. So my company as a plumber literally went out of business. I was having lunch and I'm watching CNBC, and they're talking about the TARP bailouts and how much money these bankers and investment bankers and banks are getting, and they're all getting bailed out. And that's when really something clicked and said, you know what? Now that I'm back to zero is the time to give it a go and really chase what I always wanted to do. I remember telling one of my best friends, look, I think I'm going to move to New York, and I'm going to chase my dream. I want to work in finance. And he looked at me in the eyes. He bursted out laughing, and he says, you're a fucking plumber. You're nothing more than just a plumber. And that really gave me the there's a saying that goes, success is the best revenge. Mm-hmm. So it kind of ignited that fire in me to really go through with it. So I moved to New York City. I lived in Queens. And after working at Merrill Lynch, I was able to land a job through a friend. And I signed up for finance classes at the City University of New York. When I got a full-time offer, I went to my economics professor and I said, look, I have a full-time offer at Merrill Lynch. Well, what should I do? Should I continue with school, or should I go through with this? And he goes, well, finance is really just simple arithmetic. So opportunity only knocks once. You should go for it. So I did.
Wow. So it's crazy. Armando's like 3 or 4 years younger than me. And I remember meeting him, and I remember that conversation. You were working for Pinnacle at the time, right?
Yeah.
And or Metro, one of the two.
I think it was Pinnacle Plumbing in Toms River.
Yeah. And we connected. His mom owned a bagel shop in store and bagel shop in town, and we would go there and we connected. And I saw a lot in him. He was ambitious. I saw what he wanted to do, and he was kind of like the little brother I never had. Like, I have a brother, but my brother is doesn't have that drive for entrepreneurship. And I saw it in him, and he's like, yeah, I work. I'm always working. I'll do whatever, And he was like, just fucking going nuts. His mouth was going 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, yeah, this kid's awesome. Like, I like him. And I was still young too, but I had kids at the time. And I said, bro, why don't we just, get you on a path and give you some side work? And that side work turned into, big stuff. And, him and I were pretty close. And I remember he's talking about 2008. I was one of those phone calls like, yo, bro, I'm shutting my company. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I can't do it no more. We literally got plummeted by the market, and it was over, and there was nothing I could do. It was probably the worst experience I ever went through in business at that point. I've later on went through harder experiences, but calling people that, we were friends, and we talked, we did other business stuff together throughout the years. And, he's somebody who I felt like he trusted me, and I felt like I almost disappointed him, and I didn't live up to what I told him I would do for him, because the market ultimately came as a crashing wave. And that was probably one of the hardest phone calls I ever had to make, because him and this guy, Bobby, that was our electrician at the time, he passed away. And a couple other guys were guys I was super close with. Everyone else I didn't care about, but these guys, they became like brothers to me. And we were super cool. We had relationships. We always turning jobs, and we came cool with our customers. And that was probably one of the hardest times. And after that, I don't think I've ever talked to you ever again. After that, we connected a little bit here and there, but it was never nothing serious. He wasn't on social media or nothing. And I would always ask his mom, and then he had stepbrothers and sisters, triplets. I would see them every once in a while. My kids went to school with them, and I'd be like, hey, how's Armando? Oh, he's good. And I always tried to figure out, and then we just kind of connected again. And to see what he's done for himself, it's something I always knew he had in him. It's something I always saw in him. And what he was talking about prior to us getting on air here is the amount of success he's had in the last 16 years has literally blew the lid off of what I even saw possible with him. And super proud of him. Super proud of you, bro, for what you've done. Now living in Miami, living the dream, posting up on his jet ski in the middle of the day, just literally living the American dream. And I love stories like this, and I'll tell you why. He was 15 years old in Guatemala watching TV with his dad and watching some movie, and literally inspired him to see that there's huge potential out there, asking his dad questions. And so many people who live in this country say we lack opportunity, say this country sucks, says this, says that. And you got people like Armando who literally like just moved here 4 years later, opened up his own company, didn't even speak English. And now today, you know, made millions and millions of dollars. You know, that's a true success story. So hats off to you, buddy.
Thank you very much.
He's like,
But it's
I'm
really,
speechless.
you know, and what you talk about, how the American dream is still alive. Yes, the American dream is alive, and it's always been alive. It's just been put on super hard mode. When I started really making money, and when I started looking at life as a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're essentially rewarded for every next step that you unlock or every level that you unlock. And that's really what it's all about. And people just give up. You know, how many times do you die in Mario Brothers before you actually get to Bowser and you get to beat the game, right? If you look at that as an analogy, how many times do you die in a video game before you actually beat it?
Yeah, you're almost there. You're almost at the tunnel and you die. You're almost there. You almost warp. Remember that games as a kid?
Of course.
You're too young, maybe.
No, I used to play that and Duck Hunt. Come on.
Yeah, Duck Hunt was cool. But Mario Brothers is a great testament because you literally like we're almost at the castle or you're fighting at the castle and it's like, man, I was right there. I was right there.
And what do? You start all over again.
You start all over, but you know now, right? So it's the same thing with failure. Like you go through so many obstacles and it's so much easier to get there and so much faster because you know what's ahead. And you know, and then what stops you is that next target and that next paralyzation of what takes you out. But like he said, so many people give up. So how many people threw in a controller, oh, I can't do this, versus being like, oh, I know the way. So I think that's a good comparison to like some people who are successful at like a game, not the video games today, but like when you're like Mario Brothers is the same way. Like, you know, like you've literally just built the roadmap and the GPS system to how to get to the castle. You just got beat out there. Now you have to figure out how to beat whoever you're beating, you know, to get in the castle. And that's true statement of life. Many people, once they get there and are literally almost there, they give up and they let mediocrity take over their life.
Yeah, I think the video game analogy is spot on, by the way. I mean, and you say not today. It's actually more so today in my eyes. You know, I know a little bit about video games. There's something called MMORPGs, like where you increase your skill attributes, right? So, and that's exactly what Armando did. And in games today, it's you have to practice this one attribute until you quote unquote master it, right? In order to get to that next level and you know, beat the final boss or that boss of that level, whatever the case may be. And you said earlier, Armando, that's exactly what you did. You said, I needed to learn everything about finance. How do I learn that now? And you said, fucking Google. That's what I did. I went there and Googled. So talk a little bit about how you went from zero knowledge to all the knowledge that you needed in order to be where you are today.
So, sure. So I'm living in New York City, and I'm working at it. Now I'm working at a different broker-dealer. I worked at Merrill Lynch, and I asked my boss, I said, okay, so when do we make this $1 million bonuses per year? I said, how do we get there? And he goes, well, what you really want to do is investment banking, not portfolio management and mutual funds. I said, okay, so I guess I'm in the wrong place. So I go work at a different firm. Now I'm in New York City, in the heart of it, on 57th Street and I think it was 6th Avenue or Broadway. I don't remember. But the building that I was working at, it was the 888 building. It's a famous building in Midtown. That's where George Soros' quantum fund was located. So I would see George Soros, and I would see a lot of powerful finance figures go up the elevator all the time, the same elevator that I was in. And I'm this broke kid with like extra large dress shoes because I couldn't afford the shoes that actually fit me. But I still had a nice suit and a nice tie. And in finance, that's the most important thing. People always comment on your ties. So I'm working at this place and I'm trying to learn everything and I'm studying for my test. And I don't really have an income at this time. I burnt through all my savings and I'm literally chasing my dream. So I got a job at a Mexican restaurant to bring in some income on the weekends. I went to this guy named Ernie that I was working for. And I said, Ernie, look, I have no money. Like, can you help me out? And he goes, no, part of doing this is you need to figure it out on your own. Go get a job on the weekends, and you're going to do this during the week. He said, you need to focus, you need to study, you need to be in this, and you need to live and breathe this. And what he taught me was how to sell on the phone, how to pick up a phone. And he said, this is your money-making machine. As long as you have a dial tone, you're alive. And he would send me and another kid that was also getting his license. He would send us to the New York library to get leads. And in the business library, you could download the names and the phone numbers of every business owner in the United States. And that was free information that was available, obviously funded by taxpayers. But the bigger firms would actually pay thousands of dollars a year to have access to that information. And we had to figure it out on our own. And our loophole was going to the library, downloading everything onto a USB stick, and then just dialing those phone numbers. In the process of all of this, I was homeless at one point. I got kicked out of where I was living, and I stayed in Central Park one night just walking around. I'm like, what am I doing? I need to figure this out. That's when the voices and the people, what people tell you, like, hey, you're never going to make it. You're crazy. You're trying to live out this pipe dream. And I'm walking around and I'm saying to myself, are they right? Am I going to just go back to New Jersey and get a job and just live out the life that I don't want to live? Or am I going to figure it out? And I remember after that night, I said, I really just need to figure it out. I told God, whatever it is that you're trying to teach me, the lesson that you're trying to teach me, I think that I get it. Okay. I'm sorry for all the bad things I've ever done. What is it that I'm being punished for? Please just help me. Please just that was my day of surrender, where I literally surrendered to God and said, show me that you're here. Show me that you care about me, and show me that I'm doing this thing right and I'm going on the right track, because I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm homeless. And one of the guys that worked in the office the next day, he said, look, I know that you don't have a place to stay. You can stay with me. And I lived with him for a couple of weeks before I found a room for $300 in Brooklyn.
Can't find that anymore.
No, you can't. No, you could probably find that. So. It's probably $500 or $600 now. But I was literally living in Borough Park in this neighborhood far away from the hustle and bustle of Manhattan, but it was close to the D train, and I would take the D train every morning into Manhattan. I was living in Brooklyn, and my roommates, none of them spoke English. They were all from Poland. They all spoke Polish, and I had access to a bed and a shower and a kitchen. And that's all I needed. But because my place was so depressing, I would go to Borders in Madison Square Garden when Borders, the bookstore, was still open. And I would just sit there all afternoon after the market closed. I would go straight there, and I would just plow through finance books. Just read all about finance books. Any and every finance book that I could get my hands on, I would just devour through time. And it was, as long as you got there, you could sit in a corner, you could grab a book and just read books. And that's goes back to the whole video game thing. The cheat codes are in the books. Mm-hmm. Mm. So if you find yourself somebody like Dan, who's read tons of books, you could literally have access to all that information with somebody if you don't like to read. But look, everybody needs books. Everybody needs a mentor. I've had a lot of mentors throughout my career. And if it weren't for the books and for the mentors, I wouldn't have made it, because they actually told me hey, you're doing this the right way, but you could be doing it better if you did it this way. And I would tweak the process a little, and then I would find success. I would find that in my case during that time, it was people would become more engaging on the phone, because you're cold calling people. Nobody wants to talk to you if you're cold calling them. And it's hard to get through the secretaries or the gatekeepers or whatever you want to call them, you call them, and their job is literally to not let you through. So I would warm them up, become friends with them. I would call several times until they finally let me through. And that first client, once I was licensed, once my license hit, I had to go downtown. They fingerprint you because you literally have a license to sell securities and literally print money over the phone. And I remember when I got my license, I got a picture of a white Lamborghini and I put it on my desk, and it said, "If you want this, all you have to do is pick up the phone and dial."
What'd you pull up in today?
A white Lamborghini.
No shit.
I didn't even realize.
You know what's so
That's beautiful.
awesome about what you just said, and I think the audience needs to understand, is that you said you couldn't do it alone, and the importance of having a mentor. So we talked a little bit offset about professors and, you know, college teachers and, you know, different stuff. And no knock to anyone who is in the teacher world or anyone who's a professor. Listen, hats off. We need you. But the real truth is that if you're really looking to go out there and do big things in life and, you know, hit excessive goals and make 40,000, 400,000 a month, whatever it is, like, a professor has limitations based on the knowledge that they have and based on the performance that they've experienced. So for you to be able to do something of this greater significance, you need to read the books, find the cheat codes, have a mentor. And the minute you say, I don't need a mentor, I got this, I could do this alone, is the minute that you've totally taken your full potential and thrown it out the window. Sure. And I think a lot of people at our age, and it's not a big gap, right? At our age, you know, there's a good percentage of people, if you tell them, hey, you need a mentor or you should lock into somebody who could really help you, I'm good.
Right.
I got this. What do I got a master's degree, right? Like, I don't even tell people, like, what's right and wrong, but at the end of the day, like, a degree doesn't mean anything.
That's why we don't ask.
I tell people, listen, I don't even have a PhD, public high school diploma, but I got an MBA. I got a massive bank account. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you've learned from the simple parts of life and what we were taught to do. It's what you've learned after that life. After school, when you learn more from the places that you want to go and the people you want to be like, that ultimately takes you to the highest measures of success in your world.
And we got to give your hat off to his economics teacher. Seems like that's kind of your first mentor, more or less. I mean, they told you to fucking do it, right? They said, go take that job. Where some people might have said, no, stay in school, finish out everything, and you wouldn't have been where you are today if you didn't take that first plunge.
Right. Well, he was actually an entrepreneur, and he retired and he became a professor. So he actually practiced it before he went into teaching the theory of it, which is rare. You don't get that everywhere. Really, when you talk about school and college and university, it's really just a club. Having worked in Wall Street, you know, all the Yale guys, the Ivy League guys, all the Harvard guys, all it is essentially a club where when you need something, you could pick up the phone and say, hey, I went to school with you. And that's really all it is. That's the value of going to a place like Harvard or going to a place like Stanford, going to a place like Yale. That's the biggest thing. You'll learn things that you learn in the books. So if you have money, you sign up for university and you learn the things that you would otherwise learn in books. You know, an MBA is available, and what is it, 100 books?
Yeah, it's access, right?
It's access.
Say your net worth is your network. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. And it just makes it a lot easier for them. Pick up the phone. It's bound to run into somebody that has excelled at something that you're looking to do at some point in your life. But my question is going back to what Alpha does exclusively is, you know, improve businesses, grow businesses, go from 1 million to 5 to 20 to 100, right? So speaking to that, when you get involved in a business for the first time, meet the CEO, owner, whoever have you, what's the first question that you ask them?
Well, it depends on the business. If it's a business that's looking to grow and they're already doing well and they're profitable, it's, you know, where do you want to take the company? What are your goals? You know, why did you call me? Why are we working together? if it's a company that's losing money, it's usually, how did you fuck this up so bad? You know, I've worked with companies. There was a company called DataRam that's used to be headquartered in Princeton. They were one of the oldest computer memory companies in the country. And I worked with them to turn them around in 2015, I believe this was, or 2016. The company was losing about $4 million a year. Public company. Their stock was in the dumps. And we went in. My client had taken over a couple of board seats. They made an investment, and they said, we need to turn this thing around. And the company was losing about $4 million a year. We made it break even in 45 days, and we made it profitable in 90 days. The problem was the CEO and the CFO. They had no ownership in the company. The board of directors was a closed board of directors. They all knew each other, so it was a country club. That's what you have in public companies. Typically, the shareholders are the people like us that, oh, we see this looks like a good company. Let me buy some stock. And really all we're doing is funding the lifestyle of the board, which is the country club, and the CEO and the executive team. So we went in there and we just started cutting all the perks. And that's what made the company break even. And then it was really a matter of expanding the product line and the offerings of what the company was doing and raising prices. There are companies out there that are still working on their prices from 10 years ago, and they haven't raised prices. So a lot of the companies that I go into, that's one of my first questions is, where is your competitor's pricing, and when was the last time you did a price increase?
So take us to where you are now. You were in New York City. How long have you been in Miami, or were you in California before that?
My business and all of Wall Street really went digital during the pandemic. I was living and working in New York City because that's where all the capital, really the finance capital of the world, was New York City, right? If you need a loan, if you need to get a deal done, you go down Park Avenue and you go meet somebody at Blackstone, or you go up Avenue of the Americas and you can go meet a banker at Bank of America or KKR, right? And finance used to be a really sticky business where you have to go to I call them the hobnobbers. You know, you go to the happy hour where it's an industry thing and you're going to have scotch and steak with a bunch of people that are in the industry, and you talk about what you do, what deals you're looking at, and what you're looking to get financed, what you're looking to get acquire, what assets you're looking to sell, what your client's looking to do. And that's really how you get business, right? Somebody refers you to somebody, and that's how business used to get done. And it still does to an extent, but now it's more or less more connected digitally. Once the pandemic happened, everybody scurried out of New York. All the people in finance, they had money. They weren't going to stay and cooped up in their apartments, you know, for a year. Most people left. I was one of them. My wife was the one that actually pushed us to leave. She said, I'm not staying in this apartment for 2 weeks. And I said, it's only 2 weeks. And she said, no, it's not. It's going to be longer than that. So she was right in that
Fortune
regard.
teller.
We drove and we went to Tennessee. There was nothing in Tennessee. This was the first 2 weeks of the pandemic when like the world was coming to an end. And if the world is coming into an end, I want to be where the good guys with all the guns are. So that's Texas and Tennessee and Florida, right? DeSantis wouldn't let any New Yorker into Florida, so that's why we decided on on Tennessee. Nothing going on in Tennessee, so we drive to Arizona. My wife Googled, what's the best pool weather right now? I think it was like March. So we went to Arizona. We spent some time in Arizona. And I remember I'm driving a Suburban and I have a small U-Haul. And then as we kept moving throughout the pandemic, I kept getting the bigger and bigger U-Haul. So by the time we wound up in Laguna Beach in California, Orange County, which is, it's not LA. People aren't so far off the
deep end. Yeah.
Oh, it's so far off the deep end. So we're in Laguna Beach, and it was just really a wonderful time for the kids because the kids were going to the beach every single day. And that's when Zoom really took off. Everything started getting done over Zoom. And when it was time to get back to reality and end the vacation, I told my wife, we're not going back to New York. We got to go somewhere else. Let's go to Florida. And Florida was opened up. They were it was the first state that literally said, you wear a mask if you want. If you don't want to wear a mask, you don't have to. And I started picking up the phone when I got to Florida and I started calling people and in my industry, and they're telling me, hey, I moved to Miami as well. And then I bought my first house. And it was right in time because that's right about the time when everybody started moving to Florida and the prices of real estate skyrocketed. So I always talk about the power of borrowing money. Most people are scared to borrow money and they want to own everything outright. The one thing that I learned in finance and the one thing that I learned from people that are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars is you don't make your money on income. You make your money on your assets increasing in value. That's how Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, you hear about them becoming multi-billionaires, but they're paying no taxes. And the reason why is because they're taking dollar salaries. They have stock in a public company that's just exploding in value. And in the United States, we don't pay taxes on the value of our assets. That's what the leftists are trying to do.
Right.
Oh, we should tax the rich. To them, tax the rich means property tax, right? Or whatever your net worth is, that's what you should be taxed on. In this country,
unrecognized capital gains, right? Which
right,
is the craziest
unrecognized
idea.
capital gains. And how the rich go out and they buy their houses, they buy their yachts, they buy anything and everything is borrowed money. Mm-hmm. So they pledge their stock that's worth billions of dollars as collateral for whatever they want to buy, or they simply have a name and they make a phone call and they borrow money from private investors, family offices, and they happily give it to them. So that's the one thing that I learned is borrow money. Leverage is a two-edged sword. If you use it correctly to buy things that are going to increase in value, it's good debt. If you're using it to buy yourself, cars and shoes and clothes, it's bad debt. That's not going to generate anything for you unless you're developing your personal brand, which that's the new economy today. Mm-hmm. The United States used to be a manufacturing economy in the 70s. Then it became a service-based economy. And we have been for a service-based economy for a very long time. But what a very astute investor told me was you need to develop your personal brand because we're heading into what's called the digital economy. And even look at this podcast or look at people on Instagram making millions of dollars or on YouTube. That is the digital economy. That is the future. That is where our country is heading. Even as I talk to you and I tell you how my business evolved into Zoom and to phone calls only, and the face-to-face interaction kind of died down after the pandemic. That's my business has gone digital, and I'm able to expand my business because of how everything has become digital. So I kind of went off track here, but I'm just thinking and I'm just having this conversation, and it's incredible what has happened. But going back to how I bought my first house, is I borrowed all the money, and my house doubled in value in less than 3 years. So that is how people really truly make money, is just borrowing money. The power of borrowing $1 to make $3 is how the money's made.
Mm. That's super powerful for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask, what's the first question that you ask a failing or a successful CEO, owner that's looking to expand, grow, prepare for sale, whatever have you, is a lot of businesses that we interview want to get to the next level, right? They just simply don't know how. Sometimes it's the money constraint, sometimes the personnel constraint, bunch of different constraints. You've probably heard all of it, right? Doing over $1 billion in M&A deals. What is the biggest struggle that you run to that business owners, CEOs have in businesses that you work with?
It's the CEO bottleneck.
Everything.
The
'Cause he's got to do everything.
The CEO, everything has to go through the CEO, and the CEO is the ultimate decision maker. And where you start running into issues for scaling and for growing is when the CEO is involved in the paper clips that get bought for the office. So the CEO is typically the biggest bottleneck, or the manager. And a CEO is there to make decisions. That's the chief, right? That if you look at where the title came from, CEO, Chief Executive Officer, right? What does the chief do in a tribe? The chief is the wise man that has the experience, or the wise man that knows the tribe and how the tribe runs. And what does he do? He makes decisions. He's not the one that's out hunting. He's not the one that's out gathering the grain. He's the one that's making decisions for the tribe. And people come to him for decisions. And it's the big decisions, because each unit in a company should have a decision maker. Obviously, if your business is doing less than $1 million in revenues, or less than $5 million in revenues, you're still very involved as the CEO in making every single decision. But when you're able to pass the decision-making process into the people that work for you, and this is really what's called building the culture of the company, right? Building that camaraderie in the company, building that sense of ownership for the employees of the business. When you're talking to people in the business and you ask the employees, do you see yourself at this company? Do you see yourself growing with this company? That's really how you're able to find who you can delegate to. And those are the people that you trust, the people that you know that work hard, and the people you don't want to lose. And the people that have the potential, because not everybody has the potential. There are a lot of people that just want to clock in and they want to clock out, but
Right.
there are people that want to move up. They want to grow with an organization. And once you're able to hone in on those people and groom them to be the next leader within your company, that's when you're able to say, okay, I have replicated myself in this regard. And now this person is able to handle these tasks, and this person is able to, say, manage all the inventory or manage all the orders that are coming in. And now I can focus on sales. Sales are really what are going to grow your business, right? Without sales, that's the lifeblood of the company, the money that's coming in. So if you're able to make sure that all your systems are automated, whether that's through technology or through people, and now you're able to go and get more business, or you're able to hire somebody that knows how to get more business than you do. Because there are people out there that are incredible salespeople, but they don't know how to do anything else. So if you're able to find those people and stick them in a sales role within your organization, and you take care of them, then they earn a good commission, they might give you more business that you can handle. And now you can focus on getting rid of the bottlenecks. So, for example, we bought a company in 2015, the 7th largest manufacturer of carpets in the country. And the business had plateaued. The owner wanted to retire, and the company was doing about $3.5 million in profits. We acquired the company, and we acquired that company because we knew that the owner had invested millions of dollars into the capacity of the business, so that business could handle $40 million to $50 million more dollars in sales without having to add anything else. So what the company did, what we did when we came in, is we focused on implementing a sales system and implementing a commission-based system where the salespeople could earn more. So they went out and they got more business for the company, and the company was able to grow what we call organically, right? We didn't have to acquire another company in order to grow. We didn't have to acquire a competitor. So that's really what it is. If you want to grow your business, you need to figure out how to automate processes and how to find people that you trust. And you don't have to trust every single person in your organization, but you have to trust the decision makers that you put in place, the managers. And as long as those managers can handle their units, then you have a recipe for success. The problem is that most people that are stuck in their job, or in their CEO role, in their business owner role, they want to do everything because they feel that the customer wants a high touch process from the sales process all the way to the delivery process. So that's really what it is. And that's part of getting a mentor, is somebody that's going to show you how to let go, because letting go and being in control is your biggest downfall. I mean, your business might get stuck at 5 million in revenues because you want to control everything. Now you're working 24/7 in your business and you're just working harder. And yeah, everything's running great and you're making that 5 million in revenues, but the wheels are falling off the train because mentally and your stress level is just out of control. When you could actually be delegating to people and spending more time on yourself to grow so you can grow your business.
That's so true. Back like early ages when you were doing my plumbing in the early 2000s, I remember talking to a guy who was mentoring me, and I remember specifically a conversation we had, me and Armando. He's like, "Bro, you're never on the job anymore." And I'm like, "I can't be. Like, I'm not allowed to be." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I will never grow this company if I'm always on the job, because when you first started working with me, I was on the job." And then he's like, "Bro, I never see you anymore." I go, "You're not going to see me anymore," because I realized that I couldn't be the sales guy, the estimator, the paperwork guy, the payroll guy, on the job guy. I was working so many, I was burning myself out. So when other people started noticing that I was like literally letting go and, doing stuff, he'd be like, "Hey, your guys aren't doing things the way you do them." I know, that's fine. Just let them fucking do them. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to do things the way I do them. But as long as they're getting done, nobody knows any different. And it allows me to free my time up. So that's 100% true. And like now today in my company, I do the sales or any portion of the sales, but I don't do anything else. I'm not making the phone calls, the emails, the follow. I'm not doing none of that shit. And I think sometimes, the employee sometimes looks at, oh, you don't work. I actually do a lot more work. It might be like less hours, but my work's more complicated. Right. The things I have to do take a lot more time, a lot more skill, and I wouldn't be able to continue to keep the companies running if I were the ones who were sending the emails out, overseeing the emails, and doing all that. So implementing systems is huge. You're a big systems guy. Huge. And, I'm implementing systems and strategies and all that, and it literally helps everything, though it's difficult, I think, for like people working for you to get used to. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that there's a learning curve for everything, but once they do get a hold of it and figure it all out, bro, it's game over.
I think there's something super empowering about being able to let go, right? Because in the beginning, yes, it's difficult, right? It's like, because I'm the best. We just talked about this, how kind of egotistical it is, right? So, doing all those things and you do them exceptionally well because you know what, you give a shit. And giving a shit is probably the best potion ever for excelling. So what I realized, though, in myself included, is when I started to let go of certain things, it's more so empowering than scary, right? It's like as soon as you let one thing go and it works, that person is doing the thing that you expected them to do exceptionally well. It's like, fuck, what else can I let go? It's like, how many things could I let go until, hey, yeah, I'm just making the decisions, right?
That's what I teach people.
So my question, it was coming, was how exactly, because it's easier said than done. Everyone knows that, right? How do you coach and train that CEO to let go? Because you can't just say, let go, motherfucker. You can't do that, right?
No, you can't. You use you give them advice, right? Okay. And you have deep conversations. When you go into a company and you're really looking to grow that company or really looking to turn that company around, you have to have deep conversations with that CEO and you have to build trust. And once that trust is built, then they start to let go. They start to take your advice. And you tell them, say, look, you brought me on because you know that things are not sustainable the way that they are, or you've hit a plateau. And while you might be worth hundreds of millions of dollars worth more than I am, I've seen your competitors' operations and I've seen their books and I see what their businesses look like because I've looked at confidential information memorandums of companies and how they run that we thought about buying at some point in time. So I've gotten a look under the hood of a lot of different companies in a lot of different industries. And whenever you get that look under the hood, you get to learn something. So it's like reading the books, but you're actually reading how people are doing certain things,
people.
right? So you're studying people, you're studying their business, you're studying their processes. And once you're able to build the trust with that CEO and say, look, your competitor XYZ, they're doing something this way, and this is what's working for them. And then something clicks and they start to trust you because now you've shown to them that you know something that they also know, but they don't know how it's being done. So it's in the process, they're not going to trust you with everything right away, but you'll have a lot of conversations and they'll come up to that aha moment and they'll listen to you. And we get into arguments. When companies hire me, I'm not a yes guy. I'm not going to agree with the CEO on everything that he says. Most of the time, it's an argument. If you're hiring somebody to yes you to death, then you're hiring the wrong person. Correct. So I'm the person that's going to be there and is going to put it all in front of you. I'll make you swallow your ego. And if you wind up not working with me, is because you don't want to change and you don't want to take your business to the next level. So if you're open to change, if you recognize the fact that you don't know everything, because I don't know everything, and I don't think there's anybody out there that knows everything. Just have insightful conversations with that CEO, and they'll get to trust you because they'll see that you know what you're talking about. And you say, hey, instead of doing this way, let's try to do it this way. Or they'll call me up in the middle of the night and say, I have a problem. One of my clients said XYZ. What should I tell them? And I'll tell them what to say. And they're like, yeah, that sounds, I didn't think of taking that approach. And then it'll come back. So it's seeds that you plant with the company. And that's how you're able to effectuate change and growth for the long term. It's not a pill that you take and you hire me and within 30 days you're going to see change. You could if you're in a dire situation or you're willing to really let go and go through your books and change some of your habits. Most companies, their problems are that they spend too much money on the wrong things.
Mm. So you're in a pretty aggressive industry. It seems like your work is all super aggressive for maximizing results. Question for you. When you're done at the end of the day, I know you like to put your kids to bed. It's something important to you. But when it's time for you to lay down and put your head down, what keeps you up at times with the avenues that you take and the company that you have? And what are some of the things that are troubling in your mind?
Business related is really AI. AI is coming for everybody's job. Up until about 3 months ago, I said, well, AI can't take over the sales process. Well, we've become so disconnected. Cold calling no longer works the way that it used to. It works for certain industries, but most of the sales process today is done inbound. So there's something that you click on that takes you somewhere, and then you're getting warm leads. The outbound process, it seems like it has died. 10 years ago, there was an outbound process. When I had the Lamborghini picture, it was all outbound. I was dialing numbers and begging for business, dialing for dollars.
Now it's all funnel related. If anybody's looking to buy some stock or if anybody's interested in something while they're scrolling or while they're on their computer, you know our phones listen to us. I mean, it's in the terms and conditions that microphone is hot the whole time. And you get targeted ads. And that's actually convenience for me because if I'm looking to buy something, I get options as I'm scrolling. Yeah, it's wild. I was searching for like new car insurance recently. And dude, I filled out one thing online for someone to call me. I had like 30 companies calling me. Yo, and it was wild. Like, you know, it was. How did you get all this information? I literally went to like one major company, and all these other companies started hitting
Yeah, I
me
saw
up.
your data.
You know, and that's crazy.
It's everywhere.
So it's that process, the automation process, is what keeps me up at night. Because not for me, I'll figure it out, and I'll make sure that I'm fine. I'll make sure that my next generation, my kids will be fine. But when you think about altruistically, when you're thinking about society as a whole, where is the wealth gap heading? What are we going to look as a country in the next 10 years once automation takes over the simple jobs? I mean, I went to the Dunkin' Donuts down the street, and I no longer get to talk to a person when I put my order in. It's in a screen. So what is going to happen? That's essentially what keeps me up at night. It's not really business and my business, because I know I'm nimble enough and I'm flexible where I'm open-minded to changing things and keeping up with the trends. And that's really what keeps you ahead of the pack in your business, is staying with the trends, right? But just more from a philosophical, altruistic society, what is the world going to look like? Where are we heading? That's where I'm thinking. That's where my mind goes.
The thoughts of the unknown.
The thoughts of the unknown. And it's good, right? That's what expands your mind. Thinking about problems is not going to bring you solutions. Thinking about solutions will bring about change, and will bring about something positive. The people that dwell and simmer on what keeps me up at night, or what keeps them up at night, they need to change their mindset. And this is something that I learned from Dan. And he told me, you just have to focus on the positive, change your mindset, because if you're just thinking about your problems, you're simmering in your problems, and you're literally stressing yourself out.
Yeah, I think that's something big, is that you talked about you'll adjust. You know, so even though things may keep you up at night and the worry, you said, I'm flexible, I'll adjust, I'll figure it out, my kids will be okay. And you don't have a limiting belief that something's going to come and capture you. Mm-hmm. You're just going to figure out how to just go with the game. And I think most people today, when they think about AI, they think about the future, they think about, you know, cryptocurrency or whatever the fuck they think about, they're like, oh my God, like I'm never going to have control of my money. Oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do nothing. Oh my God. And they ultimately put themselves in a place where like they're going to stop because this is going to ultimately take over. So I'm just going to let it happen.
Victim mentality is hard to get over. So, balance. Is there such a thing?
Absolutely. That's the whole reason why people hire me is so they can have a balance in their life. You know, they want to let go. They want to go out and enjoy the hobby that they have, or they want to pursue the interests that they always wanted to pursue when they got to the promised land. That's what I do. I take people to the promised land. And if I didn't live in the promised land, then I would be selling a lie. As you said before, you see me on Instagram and I'm on my jet ski in the middle of the day. That's the balance of life. I get to pick up my kids. I get to drop off my kids. I take them to jiu-jitsu. I build my calendar around my family. And I learned this from my first client, and he's a very good friend of mine. He's built a $500 million revenue company with a balanced lifestyle. He's not stressed out. Even when one of the companies was losing a bunch of money, I called him up and I said, are you stressed out about it? And we're talking millions of dollars. We're talking like $5 million a year in losses. And he said, no, why would I be stressed out? This is like, it's like a game. It's fun. We need to figure it out.
Well,
and that completely that when I heard him say that, because he's a mentor to me, he's only 3 years older than me. It changed a lot for me, and I've learned a lot from him. He is the epitome of work-life balance. He would walk into meetings with a ripped shirt and ripped jeans. And then we'd go to a Mexican restaurant. We just met with these bankers that are running like a $10 billion fund. And we're walking around with them. And this guy literally doesn't give a shit. He tells me, he's like, You got to live life the way you want to live life. You don't have to live life for somebody else.
Live
If
on
they
your
want to
own.
do business with me, they could do business with me. And these guys literally gave us a $50 million loan after we walked around with them in Vegas, went to the Mexican restaurant, and then that was it, closing dinner. Money was in the bank by Monday.
That's unbelievable. So what would you say to somebody who's, because you're talking about the upper echelon of clientele, CEOs making millions of dollars, right? What would you say to someone, maybe they're just starting out, they made their first million, right, in revenue, not in profit, in revenue, and, maybe they took home only 150,000, 200,000. What would you say to that CEO who's listening to this right now and saying, well, that doesn't apply to me, because you're talking about someone who's making millions upon millions of dollars. So what's the difference if they don't make $1 million, they lose $1 million, and they're making $5 million already? Like, okay, maybe it's not a big deal then. But for me, the listener who's only making $200,000 a year, how do you convince that person?
The honest answer is the following. Book a call with me. We'll go through your business. We'll see what your pitfalls are. We'll see how you could be growing, because no business is the same. That's like giving just a blanket answer to anybody and everybody, right? A service business, a construction business is different from a company that manufactures cosmetics, or a company that distributes paper goods. Every single company is different. Every industry has a different benchmark on their profits. So like you said, a company that's doing $1 million in revenues and it's doing 200,000 in profits, that's a really great margin. That's a 20% margin. Depends on what they're doing, depends on what they're selling, depends on the region where they work, depends on their network of dealers, the network of customers. Is it a B2B business? Is it a B2C business? It really depends. And this is how I work with businesses. Mm-hmm. So if you want to know, I give out free consultations to businesses. And if you want me to just give like a blanket answer, is how do you get there? It's really marketing. If you're doing $1 million, you're not even at the stage yet where you can invest in putting sophisticated systems in place. It's really just keep selling. If you're going out there and you're selling $1 million, is first figure out how to get to $5 million. Once you get to $5 million in sales, now you're doing close to $1 million in profit. Now you have the money to invest into really scaling the business. But there are a lot of people that don't know how to scale their business from 1 million to 5 million, and that's really in the sales process. It all begins with the marketing and the sales. Like I was telling you, a business that's in the concrete business, they're trying to figure out how to earn more business and more sales with certain construction companies, and they pour concrete, right? And I said to them, well, have you taken your clients out to dinner? Have you barbecued with them? Because if your pricing is the same as your competitor's pricing, but your competitor is taking them out and building that rapport with them and really being in their face all the time, and they get to a point where they're saying, well, you know what? I've barbecued with Anthony, so I'm going to give him the job because this guy has the same insurance, he's coming in at the same rate, and he'll get the job done in the same time. So then that becomes into that you're going into more the qualitative as opposed to the quantitative, and that's really what will make your business. Get it to 5 million, but figure out your sales process first, and that could take anywhere between 15 minutes to a 3-hour phone call.
Awesome.
So that entrepreneur, you're basically telling them, I don't care what stage you are, it's possible. It's possible to balance. It's possible to buy back time. Well, that's what smart entrepreneurs do, right? They buy time. They don't buy items, they buy time. So that's what you're telling them. So with that in mind, and people may be listening to this looking to do that exact thing, how do they find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Real Armando Soto, or you can find me on LinkedIn. You can Google Armando Soto Finance. I'm sure you'll find me. That's the easiest way to find me.
All right.
Yeah, he just started a new Instagram page. It's strictly content about what he does, and page is growing fast. So we'll tag that in the video. So, hey, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Armando, it was awesome having you out here, and good seeing you, man,
Pleasure.
after a long 16 years. If you're not following us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, go ahead and do so. We really appreciate it. It helps boost our algorithm.
Please subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.